We're going to be talking about this McCloskey's situation. If you don't know who the McCloskey's are, this is the white couple, lives in a private home, private residence, Black Lives Matter protest. They pull down a barrier. They're not on the McCloskey's property. They are on private property. That is a very important distinction to make. So if you're going to call into this show and you're going to defend the McCloskey's, the least you could do is have the facts. They were not on the McCloskey's property, and the McCloskey's lied. They said they were. That was not the case. The McCloskey's lied. They said that these people were trying to enter their home. They said they were going to, put the house on fire and light it up on fire. There is zero evidence to support anybody saying that at that protest. I want to be very clear. So what do the McCloskey's do? These Black Lives Matter protesters, they tear down a gate, allegedly. Some people are saying the gate was already like that, but let's just assume they did. Yeah, they're on private property, not the McCloskey's private property. They go on this private street. They're headed to the mayor's mansion. They were not headed to the McCloskey home. What did the McCloskey's decide to do? They don't call 911. They don't call the police. They don't even walk out in their front yard with guns. They actually walk out in their front yards with their guns drawn at the Black Lives Matter protesters. And I said, you can't do that. This is not about the Constitution. It's not about defending your property. If these people in the Black Lives Matter protesters were entering the McCloskey home, that is completely different, and I support the McCloskey's and what they did. Absolutely, 100%. But that didn't happen. We need to know the facts in this case. Those are the facts, and that's what I try to focus on here. So we learned yesterday that the McCloskey's are now being charged because it is illegal, apparently, to wave a weapon in a threatening manner. I agree. So here's what I want you guys to do real quickly. And we'll take some calls on this at 702-257-5396. But here's what I want you to do. Again, I ask you to close your eyes, but if you're driving, I certainly don't want you to do that. But if you can, I'd like you to close your eyes for a second. Just forget the fact that you're a gun owner. Forget the fact that you love your guns. Forget the fact that you're a Republican. Forget the fact that you're a Donald Trump supporter. And forget the fact that you might be completely against the Black Lives Matter movement. That might be very hard for some of you to do, but I'm trying to get to a non-biased opinion here. So close your eyes and forget about your political affiliation. Forget about it. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to imagine that these were not Black Lives Matter protesters. I want you to imagine a group of around 100 people that are all wearing Donald Trump hats, and they're wearing their MAGA outfits. And they broke down a barrier, even though they're not on your personal property. But they're all wearing their Make America Great Again hats, and they're decked out in red. And they're protesting, and they're marching to the mayor's home. Now, I also want you to imagine if they were all white. In that specific scenario, where you have 100 white MAGA protesters that are not on your personal property, do you think that the McCloskey's would have behaved the same way? Do you think that the McCloskey's would have gone in their front yard and drawn their AR-15 and their guns at a bunch of MAGA protesters? Think about that for a second before you call in. I want you to think about that. Give me that scenario. Now, I can tell you what I think the answer is. The answer is no. And if the answer is no in your head, then what the McCloskey's did was wrong. Think of it as one of those, just like one of those, reopen Nevada rallies, right? If that was a reopen rally with a bunch of MAGA supporters in front of the McCloskey home, but not on their private property, do you think that the McCloskey's would have behaved the same way? I want to know your answer. The number to call, 702-257-5396. Again, that number, if you want to be a part of the conversation, is 702-257-5396. Well, guess what? Now the McCloskey's have been charged. But the Missouri governor has come out. His name is Mike Parson. He appeared on Fox News last night, and he says he is going to pardon the McCloskey's. Have a listen to this.
Without a doubt, Sean. I'll do everything within the Constitution of the state of Missouri to protect law-abiding citizens. And those people are exactly that. They're law-abiding citizens, and they're being attacked, frankly, by a political process that's really unfortunate. It's a sad day for us here in Missouri. They had every right to protect their property, their home, just like any of us would. And if you had a mob coming towards us, whether they tore down a gate or not, when they come on your property, they don't have a right to do that in an aggressive manner. And people have a right to protect themselves, their families, and their property. That's the Castle Doctrine in the state of Missouri. And this is why this is such an unfortunate case. Okay, so this governor is a moron. First of all, they weren't headed towards the McCloskey residence. He's wrong about that. They were not on the McCloskey property. He's also wrong about that. I'm very clear with my opinions on this show. The governor is doing this because it's a political ploy on his part. He either doesn't know the facts, he's ignorant to the facts, or he's lying. Nobody was ever on the McCloskey property, period. And if they were, then I would feel differently about it. Now, this idiot also goes on, this governor, and diverts the conversation to the crime rate in St. Louis. Have a listen to this. The prosecutor in St. Louis, I think it's important to realize we've had 135 homicides in St. Louis since the first of the year. Of that, she's filed 30 cases out of 135, around 20%, and says she doesn't have the time, she doesn't have the resources, and yet you go out here and charge innocent citizens, private citizens that are law-abiding citizens that haven't violated the law. You charge people like that. I mean, it just defies common sense of why any elected official would do such a thing. You know what defies common sense? When it fixes a political narrative, when all of a sudden you care about black innocent people dying. That's what doesn't make any sense. Go ahead, go on the record and see how many times the governor has truly talked about black-on-black crime. Not very often, but if it fits his political narrative, now all of a sudden he cares about it. Just shut up. He also says the McCloskey's, what they did was constitutional. This is laughable. Have a listen to this. They had every right to do that under the law of Missouri, under the Constitution, and frankly of the United States. They had every right to protect themselves and their property and their families, whatever that might be. And again, you just got a mob mentality out there night after night going across this country. And at some point it's got to end. At some point people's got to stand up for the everyday citizens. Folks, this is the governor saying at some point we have to stand up. So in his eyes, even if people are not on your personal property, according to this governor, it's okay to take out your AR-15 and point it at protesters. Folks, do we realize how dangerous and ridiculous this is? Just so the governor can defend and back the president of the United States and make a political statement? That's exactly what he's doing. 702-257-5396 is the number to call. Let's start off with Tony. Tony, you're first up in the Vegas take. What's going on?
Hello.
Yeah, Tony, what's up?
Good morning. Okay, first of all, bottom line is if you don't break the law, you don't have to worry about it. People who break the law deserve what they get.
Okay, so let's go with that for a second. Let's just say you've got a 15-year-old kid that goes into a 7-Eleven and steals a stick of gum. Would you say he deserves what he gets if he gets shot?
If he has no weapons, no.
Okay, well, where's your evidence that anybody in this Black Lives Matter protest had weapons?
It was on the news yesterday when I was watching
what
CNN.
Network?
On CNN last night, that somebody did have a weapon.
Okay, so...
And they pointed it in the air, and they said, I'm taking this room, that's my room, that's her room.
I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't seen that. Okay, I haven't seen that story, and to my knowledge, to the best of my knowledge, there wasn't anybody in that Black Lives Matter protest that had guns. But what about all the other people that didn't have guns?
They shouldn't have broke through the gate.
Okay, that's not what I asked you.
Act like a criminal, you deserve what you get.
So if you break through a gate, even though it's not your intention to go in a house, you deserve to be shot?
If you go on the property, you deserve to be shot.
Okay, so Tony, I just want to get this right. In your personal opinion, if somebody lives in a gated community and you see an individual break through a gate, but not, doesn't matter how old they are or what they look like, somebody goes through a gate and it's private property, but it's not in a home or a residence, you're okay with them being shot. That's your opinion, Tony?
I didn't say being shot. I said you can go outside your house with a gun. If they come on your property, then you shoot.
You said at the beginning of this phone call, they deserve, at the beginning of the call, Tony, with all due respect, you said they deserve what's coming to them. That's exactly what you said. I can only go by the words that you use for anybody that calls into the show. Do we realize how ridiculous that is? Tony just called in and he just said, if you break down a gate, you deserve what's coming to you. If people had guns in that Black Lives Matter protest, do you realize how bad people would have died? 702-257-5396. Lee, why don't we go to Lee? Lee, you are next on the Vegas Take. What's going on? Hi, Lee.
Lee, how are you?
Hi, Lee. What's on your mind?
Well, if the McCloskey's had already been preconditioned to a group that had MAGA hats on, that had been causing trouble and burning and causing other things, that's the reason they did that, and I don't blame them. They were prepared.
Okay, so let me ask you a question, Lee. Is there any evidence to support the fact that those people who broke down that gate were going to burn down the McCloskey's home?
The evidence so far has said they did say that. We don't
According
know
to
yet.
who? According to
the
who?
Words are coming
the
from
only
several different
right.
directions.
The only people that said that were the McCloskey's. There is no visual evidence or audio evidence to suggest that it was true. And by the way, the McCloskey's have video surveillance. And when they were questioned about that on CNN, they refused to go further on it. You know why, Lee? Because there is no evidence of it.
They can't right now because of legal.
Okay, but Lee, if there was any evidence, by the way, that's not true. They're allowed to say that people were trying to get on their property, but if there's video surveillance, they can't say yes or no if there's evidence. That's not true.
But would you not feel uncomfortable if somebody broke a gate coming into a private group home?
So there's a difference between feeling uncomfortable and going out in your front yard and pointing an AR-15 at people. If I'm uncomfortable, or let's even go further, more than uncomfortable, Lee, if I'm scared, the first thing I do is I call 911. The second thing I do is I wait by my front door. If I have a gun, I'll have the gun with me. The last thing I do, if nobody is on my personal property, by the way, nobody was on their personal property.
In an area that was private street for a private area.
The law
it's their street personally.
I didn't say you said that.
People coming down your street.
It's not their street.
Groups like that causing violence. Then yes, you're concerned, and yes, standing out there with a gun would discourage you from coming on your personal property.
Okay, so being concerned is different than pointing a weapon at somebody.
Do I have to wait till they get in my yard and then run in my house and get my gun?
The law says yes. If they're not on your personal private property, you cannot shoot somebody.
No, you can't shoot somebody in the back. No, you cannot unless somebody's threatening you.
You're allowed to shoot somebody if they're on their personal property. But, Lee, I appreciate the phone call, but I'll say it again. They were not on their personal property, period. They did not call the police. They went in their front yard. They pointed the weapons at these protesters. Should the protesters have been there? No. They were on private property. It wasn't the McCloskey's private property. Why is that so hard for you people to understand? 702-257-5396 is the number to call. Let's go to Nathan. Nathan is next on the Vegas Take.
Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
You know, I've called before and spoken with you, and there's times where I agree with you, times where I disagree, and you're just missing a point. I mean, the statement that you made about white men wearing MAGA hats, protesting, and would they behave the same way? Please tell me the last time that white men wearing MAGA hats protesting have burned down cities, looted, killed police officers, murdered innocent people.
One word, Michigan. One word, Michigan. Do you have any idea what took place in Michigan?
They were MAGA hat wearing.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, they were. It happened in Michigan.
Come on.
No, don't come on me. I just answered your question. You just named me one time. Excuse me. It happened in Michigan.
This was happening.
Excuse me, they blocked sir, you just made a statement. You asked me a question, and I answered it instantly. Have you ever heard of Insta-call in poker? That's what I just did with you on the radio. They blocked traffic, and they stormed into the Capitol. I just gave you an answer. I don't hear you complaining about that.
Time. And I will tell you, I think the McCloskey's behave.
So now you want to avoid what I just said.
No,
okay, sure.
I don't. I'll accept that. You're talking about one time.
The same happened in Carson City. Let's go for twice, sir. Would you like to go 3 times where the prizes can really change?
I know.
Hold on a second. They tried to storm into. Excuse me. They tried to storm.
You can never be wrong.
Excuse me. I'm giving you answers, and your only response is you can never be wrong. It happened in Carson City where they tried to storm into Governor Steve Sisolak's property. Would you like to defend that as well?
No, I'm not defending that.
Okay, so would you like more examples, or are 2 enough for you right now?
How many examples do you want to give on the?
I just gave you a couple to prove you're wrong. I just gave you a couple.
How many examples do you want to give on the people that were protesting, burning down?
Okay, hold on a second. So the people that were protesting in front of the McCloskey's, how do you know if they burned down anything?
Well, you don't have to know if.
You don't have to know. So you could just assume because they're black that they must have been those same. Yeah, exactly. I know. I go where you're going with that, sir. They didn't do it, but other people did it. So let's treat them as if they were vigilantes. Yes, they broke down a gate. There is no evidence that any of those people that were in that protest burned down anything. But you're just making a gross assumption. So should I assume, sir, because you're white, that you will act the same way that those people act in Michigan and Carson City? And by the way, the reopen protesters were armed. Many of them were armed. 702-257-5396. Let's go to John. John, you're next on the Vegas Take. What's going on?
Hey, Brian, how you doing?
What's up, man?
Not much. Yeah, so, I mean, I understand what you're saying about all this, but first of all, they broke down a gate, which is against the law.
I agree.
Okay, so, I mean, someone should have called the police, all right, but I don't know. And, I mean, I understand what you're saying. They're walking on a private road, which is wrong also. But do we have to wait for them to actually do something physically?
Yes. To point a gun?
Okay. Trying to scare the people off.
I'll answer that. First of all, it should be a last resort when you take out your gun and you point it at somebody. That means you feel like your life is in jeopardy. Yes. If somebody is on your yard trying to break into your house, I support the McCloskey's. You could pull the trigger as far as I'm concerned.
Well,
but
I got that. I understand that.
That did not happen. And there is no evidence to assume that those people were trying to break into the McCloskey's home.
You wait till something happens and then shoot, or what?
You have to wait until they're on your property. Yeah.
Well, I know, but they're not on this property, but they're not supposed to even be there. They broke the gate down.
Okay, so again, by your logic, if you live in a gated community and you see a bunch of people on a private street, that gives you the right to take out your weapon, point it at people? That should be the last resort. Don't you guys understand that? That should be the last resort, man. Number to call if you want to be a part of the conversation. And before I give out that number again, I want to ask you guys this question again because I think it's important. Imagine if those protesters were white. Imagine if those protesters were Donald Trump supporters and it was a reopen the economy and they wanted to, march down to see the mayor's home and they want the economy reopened. Do you think the McCloskey's would have acted the same way? Pretend there were 100 people that were white MAGA supporters. 702-257-5396 is the number to call. Let's go to Bobby. Bobby, you're next on the Vegas Take. Bobby, what's going on? Did we lose Bobby? Bobby Brown has left the building. Let's go to Joe. Joe is next on the Vegas Take. Joe, what's up?
What's going on, buddy?
What's up, Joe?
Hey, can I make one change in your
Sure.
scenario?
Go right ahead.
Can I make the McCloskey's black?
Sure. Give me the scenario.
Well, I mean, you're bringing the scenario that they're all
simply put. Let me answer it the best way I can. If they were two black people, I would have been attacking them the same as I would have attacked the McCloskey's. You know why? Because it's wrong.
But would they still have the rights that the McCloskey's have to defend themselves?
If somebody went on their personal property, the answer is absolutely yes.
Once they broke through that gate, they entered an association, which these people are members
You can get into the weeds and say it's an association, but just because somebody breaks through a gate doesn't mean they're going to try to enter your home and hurt you.
Oh, my God. So just because a guy breaks into your house, that doesn't mean he's going to hurt you either.
Breaking into, excuse me, that is the dumbest analogy I've ever heard. If somebody breaks into your house, that is a far difference from somebody going into a gate on a private street. Don't conflate the two. They are completely different. And as I've said over and over again on this show, and I'll say it again, if somebody is on your personal property and tries to break into your house, it is fair game for you to shoot them, as far as I'm concerned.
They did not shoot anybody.
They pointed weapons at them. They pointed an AR-15 at them. What part of that do you not understand? Do you realize how dangerous that is?
Did they shoot anybody?
So you're saying it's okay for people to point weapons at other people even though they're not on their private property as long as you don't pull the trigger. That is insane.
What I'm saying is they headed these people off at the pass. They were proactive and they kept
All right, let me explain to you what the law is. You don't understand what the law is, sir.
You want to get in the people's heads that were protesting.
What do you mean get in the people's heads that are protesting? You can't get in the people's heads that are protesting. You can't. What do you mean? You're going to charge them because we want to get inside their head? Here's the thing, sir. If you point, okay, sir, let me be very clear, sir. All right, let me be very clear. If you point a weapon at somebody, okay, it could be a felony. That's what they are charged with. You can't just point your weapon at somebody if you're on a private street, whether they should be there or not. If they're on your private property or there is evidence to support the fact that they are going to go on your private property, then that is a different scenario. The McCloskey's lied.
Did they feel that their lives were at risk?
Oh, well, you know what? That's not enough. Just because you feel like if you don't have basis cause to back it up, then you can't do that. That's why they're charged with a felony. And if the governor wants to play politics, and if the governor wants to pardon them because he has an audience of one, which is Donald Trump, then fine. I disagree with it. 702-257-5396 is the number to call. Let's go to Sharon. Sharon is next on the Vegas Take. What's up, Sharon? Did we lose Sharon? Reset the phone line. 702-257-5396. Go to Calvin. Calvin is next on the Vegas Take. Calvin, what's going on?
How you doing? You know, you've woken up the right with this question because, to be honest with you, if they came down through their street with the MAGA hats and all that, they probably would have joined them and marched up to the mayor's house.
Thank you, Calvin. Finally a voice of reason. Calvin, you understand why I asked that question, right?
I understand why you ask it, but, you know, you're dealing with somebody. When you talk about Fox News, you need to rename them. They're the TDC, Trump Damage Control. That's all they do.
I like that.
That's all they do is protect Trump. And the people that are calling you now, they're pissed off because you're apparently white or whatever you are, and you're not agreeing with them.
Yeah,
These
that's because
people were only coming out with their guns to be safe. That's all they were doing.
You know, Calvin, you make such a great point. By the way, when I asked posed the question that you just answered, and you said, you know, if these Black Lives Matter protesters were, say, MAGA hatting white supporters of Donald Trump, it didn't even occur to me that you're probably right. They probably would have joined the rally. I agree with you.
I'm sure they would have.
I agree.
And they would have had no problem because it's a right to carry a weapon, and the people would have been saying, let them march up there. They have a right to carry their guns up there.
Can you, Calvin, you've been in law enforcement for a while, right? 30-plus years. Okay, so can you,
here in Vegas.
Calvin, thank you. So, Calvin, it's important. I want to ask you this. As someone with that, can you explain to people the law and how you can't just point a weapon at somebody? Can you explain the situation and why they broke the law?
Here's the point. Why they broke the law? Because did you know you can actually have an incidental shot and get less time for aiming your gun at someone? The fact of the matter, when you aim your gun at someone, you're actually threatening their life. And I'm going to be honest with you. If somebody in that group did turn around and fire back, they could have just said, like the police, well, I was in fear of my life.
Yeah, that's an excuse.
You have no right to point that gun at people because now you're putting their life in jeopardy.
You know who else uses that excuse, Calvin? You know who else uses that excuse? I was in fear of my life. You know, people out there and even some law enforcement that know they did wrong, they use that as an excuse. And listen, the majority of cops are great people.
But you know why law enforcement use that? We're trained to.
Right.
In many trainings I was in, you say words that are repetitive.
Right.
Like, stop resisting, even if they're not resisting. But the people around you hear.
Yeah.
That cop was trying to tell them to stay within order.
Yeah, guess who else?
In reality, that cop is protecting his own butt.
George, guess Calvin, I appreciate the phone call, by the way, my friend, as always. Guess who else used that excuse? 2 words, George Zimmerman. I felt like my life was in danger. How did that work out? All right, let's try to steal one more call. By the way, I know there's a lot of people on hold. I promise I will get to all your calls on the other side of the break. I promise that. I'm a man of my word, by the way. Agree, disagree, we'll get to all your calls on the other side. Let's take one more. Why don't we go to Josh? Josh is next on the Vegas Take. Josh, what's going on?
How's it going, buddy?
What's up?
Good question. I actually haven't listened to most of your callers there, and most of them seem to just be ignorant to basic law.
Agree.
You can't point a gun at somebody.
Right.
Unless your life is in imminent danger.
Exactly. So, Josh, can I ask you something? What would you say to these callers that are claiming that the McCloskey's, their lives were in danger when not one Black Lives Matter protester was on their property?
Stop with the foolishness.
Yeah. Josh, this is what I have to deal with every day.
just actually listen to your show and actually listen to most of these callers call in, and half of them sound ignorant.
Yeah, I would say more than half, Josh, but this is what I have to deal with every day.
I feel for you.
Well, Josh, I appreciate that there are people like you out there with some reason. That's for sure. I appreciate the phone call, Josh. Thank you very much. 702-257-5396 is all right. So here's what we're going to do. That's the number to call. I know there's a lot of people on hold. Sit tight. We will get to all your calls on the other side of the break, and I'm going to pose this question to all of you again. As I've noticed, nobody's answered this. Pretend for a moment that these Black Lives Matter protesters in front of the McCloskey house, it was an Open Up Nevada rally. Let's just pretend that these people are all white and they're decked out in their MAGA hats. Yes, they're on a private property on a private street, not the McCloskey residence. Same facts, only a different demographic and a different type of people. These are all Trump supporters, and they're headed down to the mayor's home because they want to reopen their city and the economy. Do you think the McCloskey's would have walked out in their front yard and would have behaved the same way? Do you think the McCloskey's would have pointed their weapons at a bunch of MAGA hat Donald Trump supporters? I think it's a very important question to ask all of you. I want to hear from you. I want to know how you think the McCloskey's would have handled that situation if, in fact, it was a MAGA group of people decked out in their Trump gear.